This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Poljot Moscow to Tokyo 1991 Jubilee watch. And, well, besides being a rather interesting and collectible piece of memorabilia, and also an over-sensory mechanical tech fest, this is actually quite interesting from an engineering and design point of view. Now, whether this thing is worth your time and money will have to be decided over the course of this video. However, the most important things, like the improved design of the original Swiss patent and the rugged tank-like build quality of the mechanism, are not so obvious. So let's get a bit in depth and discuss what this thing has to offer, whether it's worth your time and money, and, well, maybe compare it from the design standpoint with my other gold-plated mechanical, actual automatic watch, the Constantin Weiss something or other. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, this particular watch is powered by the legendary Poljot caliber 3133 23 jewel manual wind mechanism, and it's not proprietary to this watch model. It's actually widespread amongst other Poljot models. It's actually an improved variation on an acquired Swiss design pattern, mainly the Valjoux 7734 tooling. The Soviets purchased this patent and the tooling from the Swiss in the 1970s. However, being the over-resilient and consistent culture in the communist era, well, they actually improved on the design and made it more robust and brought several key features along the way to make this thing be built like a tank and, well, make it over-reliable, if you will. They also over-engineered the design, and the original Swiss had 17 joules, but the Soviets bumped it up to 23 joules and increased the beat rate to about 21,600 beats per hour from the original 18,000. So from an engineering standpoint, this reduces wear on the gear train and improves positional stability. It also boasts an impressive power reserve, anywhere between 42 to 64 hours, depending on the chrono, whether it's running or not. And here's a bit of a geek fact for you. It actually uses a heart-shaped cam rather than a column wheel. It is easier to manufacture, but feels a bit crunchier to operate. It's the utilitarian choice, the way the Soviet mentality and approach to engineering and mechanical queries was addressed during that time. It's not necessarily a bad approach to design a watch. There are also some very obscure facts about this watch. There is a high-grade temperature-resistant alloy in the mechanism. The balance is made out of glucidur, and this actually makes it as a tank. It was designed for the Soviet Air Force, so it handles shocks and temperature swings better than civilian gear. And, well, these all come together when you handle the watch. This thing is not just made, it's machined, and it feels actually honed out of a pure block of steel. It's very heavy, very rigid, very dependable, and very sturdy. It's not a fine piece of watch design. It's actually an impressive statement in terms of technological prowess and over resistance and endurance kind of like the Soviets themselves, at least what they wanted the world to think of them. There's also the mechanical quirk of the date adjustment. You don't really have dials to adjust the date, nor can you do so with the crown. The way you're supposed to adjust the date is to move the watch between the 11 and 12 hours, and then, use a sequence of commands and maneuvers in order to gain access to this date dial and, adjust it according to your preferences. So take this with a grain of salt, as there are other people more educated on the subject of adjusting Poljot mechanisms out there. Now, in terms of design, I was mentioning the build quality and the way this thing is meant to be built like a tank, and you can certainly feel this aspect from its weight, from the watch's weight all the way to the strap and the compact but thick dimensions in report to its general volume. This thing is actually quite refreshing and a bit quirky at that. Now I will just zoom in a bit and speak about the way this thing looks. As I was saying, this is actually a utilitarian and robust design. It's quite refreshing and, dare I say, quirky in its nature, given all these luxury watches out there. Now, in terms of details, I'm looking at the dial, and from my perspective, from what I can see now, there's actually nice details, and while they are pretty well made, all the letterings, the indicators, the numbers, the paint, everything, there's an impressive attention to detail, even comparing to something from the late 2010s Western culture. So given the importance of this actual watch, the Soviets at the time, the Russians from Poljot factory, really gave their best in terms of feel and attention to detail. Everything is nice, crisp, well laid out, beautiful details. Even the gold details are not as gaudy as I first thought them to be. The crown adjustment is thick and robust, as I've said, and these nice little buttons on the side, besides being useful, of course, give off a nice design vibe. Also, interesting to note this rather fetching half split in the middle marking of Moscow and Tokyo Jubilee marking. Well, all these details make this watch stand out quite a lot. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to open up the watch to show you the mechanism, and while you can see the back here, there are some scratches where the where the back lid would open. Those are not of my making. I made sure to keep this thing in as good a condition as I can. However, I did try my hand at opening it up. Sad to say, I wasn't able to perform the operation. In terms of ergonomics, I do like the compact design, and it should actually fit better with my thin wrists. However, I've come to grow accustomed with thicker and wider watches, so this thing actually feels a bit a bit unnatural given my current preferences, but I shall give it the old college try. And here we have the actual Poljot Tokyo Moscow 1991 Jubilee watch on hand. And it's a clear design choice and design perspective. So here it is on hand, the Poljot Moscow Tokyo 1991 Jubilee Edition watch. It's not necessarily of its time. I would say it's a bit retro even for the 1990s. But there you have it. It's not an ugly watch, and it's a quirky one at that. Would you prefer this to a Constantin Weiss gold-plated automatic watch? Well, that's another discussion altogether. I just wanted to show you the watches side by side so you can make an informed opinion about what they both have to offer in terms of, well, in terms of design. As I was mentioning at the beginning of this video, this watch is a limited edition timepiece and was manufactured by the first Moscow watch factory to honor the historic 1991 Japan-Soviet summit in Tokyo, during which Mikhail Gorbachev became the first Soviet leader to visit Japan. And I shall not go further into the historical background. It's not my place to do so, and this channel does not really excel at explaining historical milestones. Suffice it to say that I wanted to give you the context and to discuss the desirability and collectability of this particular watch, because it seems to be very fetching and very popular as of 2026. Supposedly there was a limited run of 10,000 collectible units, Jubilee watches of this sort. There are some differences. I saw some with different dial colors, but mainly it's the same design. However, there are some things that draw back the value and give off the vibe that this thing is not actually such a collector's item. First of which is the writing on the back. Now you can see clearly that it's stated this thing is actually a member of the 10,000 limited edition. However, on top, where it's supposed to mark how many of them were built, or rather which one this example represents, here it says 11,458 on top out of 10,000. Now you can suggest that I have a hard time understanding watch peculiarities, and I'm no expert. However, from my perspective, 11,458 is clearly a higher number than 10,000. So either this is a rather unfortunate mistake on the Soviets' part, or this is not an actual limited edition timepiece at all. I believe it to be the former and to be some sort of mistake, and this makes it a bit less valuable. In terms of clear market value, these things go from anywhere to $200 to $300 on eBay, or at least that's the listing price. Whether they are sold for such an amount of money is another question altogether. This particular unit is in good condition. It's not a pristine or mint condition one, but it's not bad at all. If you ignore these scratches on the back, it's clearly a good condition watch. It's a nice timepiece to wear at occasions. Even the strap, original as it is not actually that bad, and plus points for the original hook and belt catcher. So a bit of a conclusion to this video, or at least some closing arguments. Well, am I a fan of this watch? Actually, not so much. As I was mentioning before, I'm actually a fan of aviator style watches, of which this particular Poljot is a member of, though I don't like the gold accents. They're not to my taste. I would rather prefer this classic Orient black on white design. It's much more understated, much more to my taste. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the origin story of this particular Poljot watch. It's not to say that I have anything against it, far from it. It's just I'm not such a history buff, and I don't really. I think this is a rather obscure niche of watches to have some Jubilee obscure timepiece. It's not up my alley. Yeah, so that was my take on this Poljot Moscow to Tokyo 1991 memorabilia collectible wristwatch jubilee thingy. And as always, remember, I buy, hoard and collect weird and quirky obsolete tech stuff like this plethora of obscure timepieces, so you don't have to. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.